listening to The Kula Ring, a podcast made for manufacturing marketers. Here are Carmen Perry and Jeff White.
Welcome to The Kula Ring, a podcast for manufacturing marketers brought to you by Kula Partners. My name is Jeff White, and joining me today is Carmen Perry. Carmen, how you doing, sir?
I'm excited for today's show, my friend, and good to be chatting with you and back with the audience once again.
Indeed, and we'll just start off the show by apologizing if you can hear a fire alarm going in the distance. That's because it's outside of our office, and I just heard the fire engines roll up, so hopefully it'll go off soon. But
yes, we're hopeful. We're hopeful that the Divey Tavern, a couple of buildings down, isn't going up in smoke.
It would be a shame,
but it wouldn't be the first time. And there's a hotel kind of attached to it, so this could get bigger than the both of us. So if we need to cut this out early, we'll let y'all know.
It'll be the first time that has had to happen in several hundred episodes. But yeah, I am looking forward to our guest today. And joining us today is Kevin Sum. Kevin is the Director of Marketing at Anguil Environmental. Welcome to the Kula Ring, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to the discussion as well.
Kevin, it's awesome to have you on the show, and I love how Jeff almost screwed up on the on Anguil. Like it was a really hard one for him to get.
You didn't really get it there either.
Anguil, I thought I did it good.
All right, it's fine.
But look, I spent my career here trying to correct people, so I get it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. But look, in all seriousness, let's jump into it. Kevin, introduce yourself to our audience, and perhaps tell us a little bit about Anguil along the way, if you would.
Yeah, thanks. Kevin Sum, I'm the Director of Marketing at Anguil. I was fortunate enough to get my start in this career, crazy enough, 27 years ago, and I've stuck with it. It's exciting. You feel like you're doing something for the better good of society, and I'm really passionate about marketing. I love it. I work for a great company. Anguil's a family-owned company. We do industrial air and water pollution control. It's interesting from a marketing perspective because our demand is regulatory driven. When you're selling other products, people have demands for all sorts of reasons. Our customers are manufacturers, and the government, the local or federal governments are requiring them to purchase our technologies and services. And we're basically helping manufacturers. When they have water or air discharge, we're helping them keep the air clean and keep the water pure, and we're a global company. We started here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, grown quite considerably in the last couple 10 years. I would say it's all good marketing, but there's a lot of.
But of course, we'd say that.
Yeah, right. No, we have a great company.
Man, if the company would have been cut in half in the last 10 years, they'd have blamed marketing. So you may as well take it
Exactly. No, our family attitude and culture just starts at the top and goes through the whole company. It's great. We've got a presence in China, Taiwan. We just opened an office in India. We're heavy in Europe. It's just really exciting. It's a cool industry, very niche, or as you say up in Canada, niche.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We weren't sure what you meant at first.
Yeah.
Where it is so regulatory driven and where you are a global company, how does that impact your go-to-market strategy? Like, is it different in the United States than it is in China or other countries?
Yeah, it is different. Definitely. The easy answer there is yes. But even it's different within the United States. You can have. I'll start with the United States. You can have a manufacturer that's making a product and they have a certain SIC code, but they happen to be manufacturing within a polluted or within a heavy populated area. That same manufacturer with the same product and the same output that's doing it out in rural nowhere, the regulations are the requirement for our equipment is different. So that's unique. Like going when you were in marketing 101, they're like, oh, target SIC codes, NAIC codes. We can't do that. It's just because one SIC code in Guam does not mean it's going to be regulated in the United States. But globally, though, Yeah, it's challenging. It's very refreshing to see the amount of international inquiries coming in from countries that just never had regulations before. From an environmental standpoint, I find that refreshing. It's, um, you know, even China, they're clamping down hard. Our office in China is slammed with business and inquiries. Right now, we're seeing a huge influx in inquiries from Malaysia. Just and oftentimes they cite U.S. regulations, which is kind of cool too. They'll say, well, we're following U.S. regs, and then Europe has a slightly different set of regulations, but very strict as well. But I have to say, uh, the last 3 to 4 years, the big change has been what they call ESG. It's environmental social governance. So where 10 years ago a company would say, my local regulatory authority is saying that I need to stop this air or this water pollutant from going into the environment. Now it's very refreshing because you just have corporations have these ESG ratings. It's kind of sometimes regulated by their banks, but it's your company's external um, personality, if you will. How are you treating your employees? How are you treating the environment? How are you treating your community? And that ESG rating, it's just very cool to see. It's driving people to buy our systems because everybody wants to be green until they see the price tag. And and then, but these ESGs are really changing that. It's cool.
I'm kind of curious. To what extent do you find yourself trying to anticipate or chase regulatory changes versus simply the sales offices and whatnot responding to them as they happen? Like, to what extent are you trying to anticipate, oh, this is happening in country X, Y, or Z, or region X, Y, or Z, and therefore we're spinning up our marketing in advance of that or in parallel to that?
Yeah, I often tell my boss if we could follow the EPA around in their cars, you wouldn't need marketing. You could, but it's tough. It's very challenging. Sometimes we try and tackle that with both sales and marketing. The salesmen on the street often are hearing, "Hey, Kevin, this new compound. One of them in the news right now is ethylene oxide. It's a heavy. They've found that it's very cancer causing. The rate at which it causes cancer is much more dangerous than they originally even anticipated. So 4 to 5 years ago, we were hearing that on the street, which from our salespeople. So then they bring it back to marketing, and we say, okay, now let's dive in. Let's get with the regulatory authorities, start doing research. But there is a lot of chasing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does that drive product development as well?
Yeah, yeah, it does really. It really does. These are custom systems, so that nothing we make is the same. The standard system is upwards of $300,000 to $400,000. They can be smaller, but that's like on average, and they're all custom built for the application.
Really cool. So, I mean, this is an interesting challenge because you're on the one hand, you're trying to chase the world environmental regulations as a global provider of these systems is not going to be an easy chore. Um, it's it's as you said, it's a very niche market. So, what does your marketing mix look like? Where's the gold in that mix that you're like this? Look, I found this is what drives. Like if I needed one thing to drive leads, it's X, Y, or Z. What is it?
Yeah, my kids are in high school right now, so they're studying marketing, which is kind of cool. And they talk about the 4 Ps and the marketing mix, and it's just kind of cliche, right? But I have to say, the marketing mix is really crucial for us. We could spend a lot of money on a very aggressive digital campaign that targets the right industry and targets the right audience, and because we are very niche and it's a very expensive capital expenditure, we may get a couple leads out of that, which is hey, we'll take it. It just takes one lead for us or a couple leads. But I like to say, grown adults like stickers. So being in the manufacturing world, people wear hard hats. and they wear them with pride. You walk around a facility, you walk around a job site, they've got their hard hats, and you can tell how long they've been in the business by how many stickers they have on it or how cool it is. And the guy that walks up with a brand new hard hat is clearly new. So we want to get an angle sticker on his hat, and he works for a chemical company now that needs one of our systems. He may go to the competing chemical company tomorrow, and I hope he shows up with his hard hat with our sticker on it. So
I was always amazed that people carried those between jobs because in one of my first positions ever as a designer, I was doing a lot of work with industrial paper manufacturers and touring their plants and shooting videos to teach kids about forestry and stuff like that. And I was always amazed that guys that had been there forever had these beat up old hard hats and covered in decals and everything else, their name on the front.
yeah.
But you could tell like some of them had come from the power company or other places. And they had all those stickers on there too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it truly is a kind of a badge that
Yep.
follows the prospect around. Not the prospect, but certainly an influencer potentially.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
How I guess that's an interesting question, though, Jeff, or a point, because of course, as you think about grown adults like stickers, appreciate there are white hats and blue hats, and those are and people buying your systems may wear one hat or the other, and influencers may wear one hat or the other. What does that committee look like? Who are you trying to get in front of? Because it's not just the guy or girl in the hard hat, I'm guessing.
No, and whether we're trying to sell service or replacement, a lot of times our systems are purchased from a procurement department with engineers and maybe people who have never been in the facility itself. They're designing or they're the permit person. But yeah, then once it gets in the field, we're targeting the person turning the wrench on it.
I'm kind of curious. Because like how much do those people turning the wrenches actually pull new business? Like how much do they influence it? Do you find?
A lot. I really do. A lot of these manufacturing facilities are very incestual, whereas if you're in a certain industry, like Jeff was saying, if you're in the printing industry, you're gonna make the most money if you move to another printing company, and hopefully you go from from turning the wrench to being the maintenance manager, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're in on the decision on the next system, and you had a good opinion of our device at your last employer, and now you're with a different company at a bigger position. So yeah, that's where that marketing mix really comes in. You gotta hit them at every angle.
One of those angles, though, that you're not necessarily hitting people in is print anymore. Haven't been for
Yeah.
some time. What was driving that, and has that has the actualization of digital really made the difference in the last number of years?
Are you kind of asking if there are any regrets in ditching print?
Yeah,
Is it big?
yeah. Every once in a while, you hear from people who are, we used to get some really great leads from that trade publication.
Yeah, yeah. Well, from an environmental standpoint, print is now a lot of printers use water-based solvents or water-based prints, so inks, and so that's a good thing. So yeah, people are truly not using as much print as they used to. But from a marketing standpoint, we certainly aren't. We haven't printed a piece of literature probably 4 or 5 years. Our trade shows are now going completely paperless. We'll have QR codes out, and that's a new thing for us this year. It's a sustainability initiative for us. So no more paper at trade shows. And I'm a post-it note guy too, which is going to drive me nuts. I'm going to have to use my phone to take notes. But it's good. But yeah, our 50% of our, if not more, of our budget is digital. And a good chunk of that, surprisingly, is still trade shows too. We're still we're still doing trade shows. I don't think they're dead like the industry said at one point. They're just different. Whereas you used to expect thousands of people to show up at the booth, now you just you hope for hundreds, but they're there to have conversations, which is good, especially in the United States.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm curious to see how booth design and display thinking kind of evolves to kind of accommodate that. Because I think at one point, in those shows that were incredibly busy, where there's just thousands of people moving through a booth or whatever, you're trying to accomplish one thing, and then when you have time to actually talk to people, you kind of actually are trying to accomplish a different thing, or you can kind of design the experience a different way. And I mean, the QR codes are just the tip of the iceberg. If we can be thankful to the pandemic for anything, it's the people that invented the QR codes. They actually taught people that how to use this thing for the first time. I feel it's such a strange thing.
Yeah, right.
Now
I
now
agree.
they actually get engagement.
Yeah, we were trying to get people to make it a thing back in 2014, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I felt as an industry, we were trying to make people. Yeah, that's a good point. We were definitely pushing it.
Yep, no one was listening.
Most people are looking at it like, what? What is that? Is that a?
I have to download a special app to read it.
Yeah, why would I do that?
Yeah, I always said that when Apple makes it a native part of the camera app, that's when QR codes will take off. So it's interesting to kind of think about, is that what spurred it, or was it the pandemic and the proliferation of QR codes? So, or did they happen at the same time? I don't know.
Yeah, someone should write a book.
Yeah.
It's probably already out there. There's probably a whole podcast about it. How are you? So trade shows are still a thing. I think we're hearing that kind of across the board. It was really interesting because during the early days of the pandemic, we had a number of episodes with people who from the IMTS show and other trade shows, as well as those who were kind of peripherally related or reliant on them, were saying, "Oh my goodness, it's changed forever, and we'll never go back, and it's all going this other way." And now we're kind of rebounding, and a lot of the things that many of us were taking as gospel 2 years ago or even a year ago are realizing no, kind of things want to kind of find their natural balance back the other way potentially, and we're going to be going back into those places. But I guess where I'm going with this is, how in that mix, how are you bringing things to life digitally, not necessarily just for the show, but more broadly, the digital strategy of how you're targeting these niches.
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. Of course, you got your website and search engine optimization and all that, which seems now so routine, almost so necessary. But I really think with for our business specifically, we need to become hunters as a and I think to myself, having worked with salesmen from 20 years ago, and they would get the bingo card from the magazine. I don't know if you guys probably remember, but magazines used to go out, and if you liked a product, you'd circle a number and send it into the magazine, and then that advertiser would send you a piece of literature, this and that. And those salespeople would live and die by those bingo cards. And now, if I would have told them 20 years ago, hey, 20 years, we're going to be able to put our company information in front of someone wherever in the world in a moment's notice. If they're on, we can push out a piece of content. We can tweet something out, and they could be on vacation and see our messaging. And then the game changer, really, in my opinion, is the fact that oftentimes we can tell the salesperson who that was. This reverse IP lookup is huge for us. We're hunting people that come to our. I hate to say this, but sometimes when you could track people that come to your website and do, let's put it this way, intelligent canvassing. Everybody hates Big Brother, right, and whatnot, but we have reporting software that'll say, hey, someone in this industry, in this region, at this company is looking at your product. That's a salesman's dream. And by the way, you got this great thing called LinkedIn, and it'll tell you exactly what he does and where he works. You can pull up the company name, and it'll tell you who all works there. And so 20 years ago, those salesmen would have said, that'll never happen. No way. No, I'm going to drive in my car and drop off books at different manufacturers. And now, how cool is that they can sit behind their computer and intelligently canvas?
I have to think, though, that a lot of those sales guys back then probably still like that idea better, of somebody taking something out of the magazine, punching that circle, and requesting the information. Like, that's a solid lead,
Right,
These guys
right.
showing up to our website.
They had to mean it. They had to mean it then.
Yeah, yeah.
It was postage paid, but you still had to put it in the box,
Yeah, but But it is important to note, though, because when you are in this kind of category, very few people are showing up to the website by accident. They're not spending time to explore what's going on because they're bored in between periods at their kids' hockey game or something, to use a Canadian reference. But, so you know that kind of intelligent, to your, I guess the way you label it, intelligent canvassing makes a ton of sense, and it's still low hanging fruit for a lot of people. A lot of people, a lot of B2B manufacturers still aren't doing that and providing the sales teams with that information.
I would agree with you. In the industrial world, it's sometimes easy to look like a marketing genius because we're slow to adapt from an industrial standpoint. Uh, a lot of times, you'll have a owner of a manufacturing facility like ours, or a system provider like us, and you'll have the owner say, well, I can do the marketing. We don't need to hire somebody for that. Why would I use an agency? So and then when they realize that that their competition's passing them up, um, it's but they're slow to adapt, is my point. Oftentimes, I think we were in our industry, I bet you we were the first ones to do pay-per-click, and I think I took my competitors off guard. We started in 2007, and I was standing next to a competitor once at a trade show, and he says, "I see your stuff everywhere. How are you doing that?" And I just shook my head. I'm not really sure. You go figure it out.
That's pretty awesome. I remember the days when you could actually find an industry that hadn't discovered pay-per-click yet
Yeah.
and introduce it to them and just decimate their competitors.
Of course, that kind of these kind of newbie gains at the gym are going to be harder to get. Where
Yes.
the next
Yes.
5 years aren't going to be as easy as the last 15.
No, no, the competition's gotten smarter for sure. One thing interesting, we were talking earlier about print, but in our industry, I don't remember the year, but in one year there were three industrial pollution control magazines that were the top dogs, and they were still print, and it rocked our world because they all three went out of business in the span of 2 years, and none of them converted to digitally. So there was this void of digital pollution control. Publishers, and thankfully we've got several that have come up, but none of those three print made the conversion, and we had a void. It was crazy. To your point, Carmen, I don't know that we'll have that in the that may not happen. Something like that may not happen again.
Like I find some businesses that operate kind of in these more regulatory categories, sometimes companies that try to help other companies be more environmentally friendly or what have you. Sometimes it can seem like your struggle to wear the two hats. On the one hand, like, are you savior of the environment, enforcer of regulation, or are you the service provider that helps people do what they need to do in order to meet that objective? Have you ever run into that kind of tension in your marketing and outreach efforts? Has this come up at all? And again, if it's an absolutely silly question, I'm open to that too.
No, actually, it's not. It's I, I'll go back to trade shows. I mean, we would have people walk by us at trade shows, and we have this picture of this massive pollution control device, and the guy walks by and he goes, "I used to have one of those. Finally got rid of it." He was wearing it with a badge of honor that he got his regulatory authority to get rid of that uh, that terrible thing that he had to manage, because we're end of pipe. So the manufacturer's making their widgets, and they want the process equipment operating 24/7, uptime, uptime, uptime. We're at the tail end taking everything they throw at us, from water to air, and when our system doesn't operate as they expect, we are the devil. We are big bad government, making them do this, and yeah, and then in the United States, you kind of have well, they're getting away with this overseas. That's why we're not competitive. That's not really true anymore.
Hmm.
And one interesting thing that we found is even 10, 15 years ago, U.S. companies that did business overseas stuck with U.S. regulations. If they started manufacturing in foreign countries, they followed U.S. regulations, and I don't think the general public really understood that. Um, now that was U.S. companies, granted.
Sure. Yeah, it's really interesting though.
Is it just that they're more worldly? Is it just that they're more worldly then and
Yeah.
versed in what's expected in other places, or
Yeah, well, now it's they have these standards, these ESGs for sure. Now it's they don't want that black eye, right? From a PR standpoint, if you're a manufacturer and you get this black eye of wow, everybody around my plant has cancer, or all the people that live around my plant and outside. I always use Guam as the example, but I'm in Guam and I've got a manufacturing facility and everybody around me is dying. Now that gets out in the web and you've got a huge black eye. So it's almost like forget what the regulatory people say. We manufacture, XYZ manufacturing, we don't want that black eye.
There's a real economic impact now.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
allows you to sell, in some ways you can move from selling to we help you meet regulations to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt associated with that
yes,
black eye. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Powerful motivator.
definitely.
well, when it starts to appear in popular culture, I'm thinking of Aaron Brockovich and other things like that. Like, those are things that regular people can recognize
And
and
not a
understand.
recent movie, one should note.
No,
That was an impressive reference, by the way.
Stripes, is it that old? Wow.
It was one of the first though that I will say that was
Yeah.
game changer.
Well, what this could change in your marketing as well, of course. If we're seeing the ESG sensibility being one of the drivers, are you starting to shift your marketing then to say, you know what, it's not so much about the regulations driving our business. We can actually go out and try to seek out businesses that are looking to be a gold standard in their ESG rating.
Yes, yeah, those are the customers we definitely want. Every once in a while, you got to divorce a bad customer, and we certainly try and latch on to the ones that have the mentality you just described. Really, those are the ones that value it, and they're easier to work with. And these things take maintenance. You can't just set it and forget it. You have and to stay in compliance, you have to invest time and money and so yeah, the customers that have that at their forefront of their mind are easier to work with, and yeah, we do try and play to their heartstrings a little bit too, especially socially, right? Socially, we our messaging is much more um, uh, green, I guess, and more emotional.
Hmm.
That's really interesting because it brings another layer to creating an ideal customer profile. Like, how are these? It's not just like what's the firmographic information of your firm in order to understand kind of what you're about, but then you're also layering on top of it. What other messaging are we hearing? What other kind of sustainability initiatives are they touting in order to get that, to find your top tier customers that are placing a real value and importance on environmental initiatives? You probably do well to look at what other environmental initiatives are they talking about, and then kind of put that on to the actual typical information.
Well, are they actually publishing an ESG report? Things of that sort
Yeah,
would
yeah.
all be pretty strong indicators that this might be a tier one prospect potentially.
Yeah.
And that when we're our sales cycle is extremely long, so then when we're down to after the 2-year journey of their first inquiry to the proposal, and now let's just say we're down one of two suppliers being selected or considered. Um, yeah, we do well at keeping our customers profitable. So we design uh, around keeping them up and keeping them in good favor with the local authorities, their local environment, and then when you show that you've done it to the client, show that you've done it to the client for other people, you can sometimes get a premium, and you should. We stand behind that. We have these core values that are extremely strong. We just developed them, and we don't walk away as one of them. We don't walk away. Our company is it's always been our philosophy. We don't walk away until the customer's happy. And in our industry, people do. It's kind of scary. The contracts are written so that there's 10% at the end, which is based on compliance, and we have some competitors that will just say, you know what, Mr. Customer, you can have my 10%. I'm not going to fix this.
90% was good.
Yeah. So we definitely don't walk away, and we never have. It's something we take pride in saying and standing behind.
It's been a fascinating chat. I'm just curious as we come to a close here, kind of what is there something kind of around the corner or something that you're seeing from a marketing perspective that you're either thinking holds a lot of promise or is causing a lot of concern?
Um, one that's kind of hitting me right now a little bit is the effectiveness of email marketing. It's just difficult. Even here at Angle, we have I believe we have two spam filters. So if somebody wants to get a hold of me, they got to get through two different spam filters, one based in Outlook and the other is a third party. Um, we don't spam people. Our marketing messages are very targeted. They're to people who have opted in, so we're very cognizant of that. But even still, the people aren't answering those emails. Even when we break through and get to their inbox, they're just everybody's so consumed with, or excuse me, so exposed to marketing, and they're much more selective about what they click on and what they read, and that. So email marketing's tough. It's another one of those things that used to be so effective and we thought was so great, and now it's tough.
It's a bit of a digital sacred cow, isn't it? I mean, when you
Yeah.
think like all the other things can come and go, but man, like email marketing
You can
has
always
been
depend on email, but apparently
Right.
not the deliverability.
Yeah. You got to really design well so you can get through those multiple spam filters, and then even if you do, hopefully they don't unsubscribe or tag you, or worse yet, tag you as junk. Then you'll never make it back in.
so. Is that at what point are you actually looking at it now and saying, you know, we need to get it? We need to our marketing in 3 years won't rely on email anymore. Like, has that kind of decision been taken?
Um, I wouldn't say the decision's been made, but I feel like the writing's on the wall a little bit. We certainly don't use it like we used to. Like I used to do trade shows announcements like, "Hey, we're going to be at this trade show," and we'd go into our CRM and select based on industry. And I'm hoping these people are going to meet me at the show. They got to. I sent them an email. We don't do a lot of promotion for trade shows anymore because I see the unsubscribes happen, and I don't want to be that supplier. We want to when we do go into their inbox and intrude into their inbox, we want it to be relevant. Hey, we know you have this type of system. We think that you may want to look at this, and this in order to stay out of trouble with the pollutants. And then maybe at the bottom say, and by the way, we'll be at the XYZ show.
I think though, I mean, at least if they unsubscribe or worse, mark you as spam, at least then you know where you stand. It's the ones that are unengaged and just get dropped out by your email tool because they're not doing anything. Right? Like just the degradation that happens over time as people just ignore. I think is probably an even bigger threat than someone unsubscribing. At least if someone is unsubscribing, they're making a choice to do something.
Good point. Yeah.
It's interesting to, and you see people kind of grabbing for the alternatives, right? I mean, I got a salesperson that I was engaged with in a conversation with just before the holidays. Recently tried to add me to a Slack channel or something. It's like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Like it's like, uh,
If you text me, we're done.
so, like, yeah, but we've actually talked to people who have looked at their sales strategy as trying to earn the right to text. As a salesperson, they thought that when they earn the right to text, I get that. You are
Yeah.
getting over a barrier, but pretty hard to do that at scale, earning the right to text. And I think as marketers, we may just have to. Uh, look for something completely different, not saying what's going to replace email. It's almost kind of just like it.
Yeah. That is an interesting perspective though. That barrier to text. I hadn't looked at it that way. That's interesting.
Like, yeah, how good does the relationship have to be, or how good does the value that you provide have to be in order for that person to actually want you to text them?
Yeah, yeah. And you better be a high value target, because that salesperson only has so many hours in the day, and so if he's trying to get in, if that's the objective is to get text clients, you better be one that's going to be buying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look at the
Yeah. Who is a text-worthy client?
Yeah.
there's a solid Seinfeld reference for those not paying attention. And
That's probably even older than Aaron Brockovich.
indeed, indeed. And with that, we shall thank Kevin for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, mate.
Thanks, guys. Great conversation. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, me as well. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Cooler Ring with Carmen Perry and Jeff White. Don't miss a single manufacturing marketing insight. Subscribe now at KulaPartners.com/The Cooler Ring. That's KULAPartners.com/The Cooler Ring.